Yes, I hope.
Good evening, everyone. This is Pradeep Mal, Ambassador of Change from Getty, the Global Education Training Institute. We're extremely sorry that the previous broadcast was disrupted, uh, which is a good thing because we are on disruptive education. So we are back on again, and the Global Education and Training Institute of Lucknow is the best institute in India for teaching teachers and principals. And we have many pre-service and in-service programs which are conducted by our international and national speakers. For more information on this, please get on to gettylearn.org, GETILEARN.org, or contact us on 740-840-1000. You are on our disruptive education platform provided to us by our mentor, Dr. Sunita Gandhi. On this platform, we have met more than 1,000 educators from India and all over the world. And this evening, once again, we have for you Mrs. Samiksha Madhukulia. She is a PhD research fellow and teacher in the Glow School, Tezpur, Assam. She is an MA in Cultural Studies. She has qualified the NTA, NET, and JRF in folk literature. She is pursuing a PhD from the University of Science and Technology in Meghalaya. She is also related to national and international NGOs working on women empowerment and child development, gender culture, and educational expansions. She is also on a couple of reputed NGOs from South Africa. She won the Kailash Nath Datta Award for the highest GCPA, and she also has spoken on several webinars and has edited IBSN books on women, gender, and empowerment issues, and thinks of herself as an aware citizen of India. She will be speaking to us on a very vast topic, which is culture and education. Thank you, ma'am, so much. Thank you for being with us once again. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be a part of this esteemed organization and give a lecture on the topic of education and culture because Getty, I have heard the name a lot, and it's one of the most reputed organizations for teacher training and learning and for teaching and getting education as a whole. So thank you so much for inviting me. And today my topic would be a very huge one. It's on education and culture. So in this one lecture, I'll try to sum up on things, how we can connect culture and education. So here I begin. Yeah, I'll be dealing with what is culture, then I'll be dealing with what is education and the relationship that culture and education shares, and then we'll be talking on influence of culture on education and vice versa, and then we'll end the program. So let's begin. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without the roots, says Marcus. So basically, when we look into culture, culture is something which is ingrained in us from the womb. Okay, so the moment we are born, a kid is born, the ritual starts taking place, or even before a kid is born, a ritual starts taking places. So what is that? The ritual in itself is a culture because it is a belief system, it is a way of life, or it is a tradition that one individual follows. So even willingly or unwillingly, any organism, any person, any human present in this environment, the moment of its existence as a child or even before a child, the moment of its existence from the very inert place of his body, he is culture, he is into the vast circle of culture. So culture is basically everything, and if we say that we are someone who is not in culture, that is not true because culture is in us and within us. So the next topic that we will be talking about is education. So as it is rightly said that we accept that education is something that begins from the womb to the tomb, that's true, and that's how we can see a connection that develops between education and culture, because culture also talks about roots and education also talks about roots. It talks about how it begins from the womb itself. So culture and education stands parallel to one another, and it is intersecting in terms, but it works together. Okay, So we will learn about this. These are the two important points in which we can establish the point that culture and education is correlated to one another. So now we'll talk of what is culture. So culture is like a big umbrella. It's a big umbrella under which every aspects of life falls into. But because it's big, when things are big and it's multifaceted, the various approaches to which people look into culture. The first very approach into which everyone looks into culture is it's a way of life. People say that culture is a certain pattern that every individual, its group, its community follows. It's a way of life. The things that we do in everyday life is culture. According to some, it is inherited from the past. So when we talk about the word culture, for example, Sanskriti, when we talk about the word Sanskriti in itself, we try to relate it to something which is from the past, like the traditions, the rituals, the norms, the beliefs in a family, the superstitions that we have. It's something that is inherited from the past. So it is something that is past. So when we talk about inherited from the past, it also includes the historic angles, the historic stories, the norms. So according to some people, they see it as something which is related to the past, which is also not wrong. And culture is also something which is common patterns. People nowadays believe that culture is not something only of the past or not, it's a way of life, but it is a common pattern or common ideology that an individual or a group of peers spend together or share together. For example, if I am working in a university and my colleagues, they and me follow a same routine, we follow a same norm, we follow a same time of break, or we follow a same time of taking the classes, the way we module ourselves within the given environment, and we adapt ourselves to a pattern which is common not only to one but to one or more individuals or as a group. That is also culture. So that culture is also common patterns. So for now, the popular culture we can talk about is a culture in itself. So now that the online system of education is going on, so that has also gradually evolved. Like every organization, every education institutes are adapting to online teaching. So that is a common pattern that all education institutes, most of the education institutes are following. So that also falls under culture. So if we term it as online culture for education, it won't be wrong. So culture is also common patterns and performances. So according to some, culture is also performances, because when we say culture, we prescribe it also as something which is related to your dance, your music. It can be a movie, it can be a comedy, it can be a comic book. Anything which is related to performances can be culture. Performances, by which I mean, is not only the performances that are performed in a area or in front of an audience, but it can be performances in terms of religion. For example, the death ceremony rituals that we follow, the birth ceremony rituals that we follow, or the puberty rituals which we follow are also performances. So culture in short would be anything and everything that is surrounded by us. Culture in short, it is everything. So we are always surrounded by culture and we cannot deny to the fact. So to have a more descriptive idea of what is culture, let us look into Taylor's definition. So, culture is a complex whole which includes knowledge, beliefs, arts, morals, laws, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by as a member of the society. So, here we have something, the society, the term society. The society is built with the concept of culture. There are lots of individuals, there are lots of ethnic groups, there are lots of ethnic communities, and still they exist together. Society means the community in which we live. So now it says that culture is a habit, or it's a acquired knowledge which every members in the society has. Like I have already said before, culture is something which everyone has it in them. So it means that culture is a way of life and it's dynamic. It is not only hereditary, but it keeps on changing. It is changing from time to time and it keeps on modifying. So therefore culture is said as a complex whole, because today we are following a culture, tomorrow we are changing that modified form of culture and we are creating something, another culture out of it. So culture is not stagnant and it is dynamic, and culture is complex in nature because it includes everything and everyone. We as an individual, we can reject or marginalize a group of people, or we can marginalize a group of ideas, but when it and if we talk about a cultural point of view, it includes everything. So it's a complex whole as well as it is an integrated whole. So let us have an etymological look into the meaning of culture. So culture is basically derived from the Latin word cultura, and it means to cultivate and cultivate the mind. So here's how we start to connect it with our original topic, that is culture and education. So when we talk about culture, it actually means to cultivate. And what do we cultivate? We cultivate the mind. What do? We shape our mind, we shape our ideology, or we bring about a sense in us so that we understand what is going on around us. And therefore when we cultivate the mind, we do, and we cultivate the mind through the process of educating us. It might be a formal education, it might be an informal education. When we talk about education now, we always look into formal institutions, or we look into formal, buildings which says that okay, this is this university and this is school. But in real case, education doesn't only mean formal education, but it also means informal education at the same time. It also means peer learning, it also means community learning. So if we look into the big picture, when we say cultivate the mind, directly we can see the connection between culture and education, because the main aim of education in itself is also to express what we think, or to spread the knowledge that we have. And education also helps in cultivating the mind. Once we start becoming educated, our mind keeps on growing. So that is what is culture. So education in itself is a culture, and culture is the bigger umbrella under which education plays a major role. So in short, we can say that culture is something which is related to creating the mind, and this is a form of education that we receive. So there are aspects of culture. Culture can be a material or non-material, and by material culture we can mean the tangible elements like our dresses, the food that we eat, the lifestyle that we live, the the things that we use in our pujas, we use it in our rituals. Those the things that we can touch is material culture. And there is another aspect to it which is non-material, in which there are beliefs, there are understandings, there are ideologies, and also education. But at present, education can be considered as both material as well as non-material um, aspect of culture. Because a material culture in education, there are various vocational courses which come up, and which we do hands-on training. We're doing it practically. On that basis, education is related nowadays to your material culture as well as your non-material culture, because it enables you to understand the Vedas, it enables you to understand what you are learning, it enables you to gain knowledge which is not tangible. So there are two aspects of culture, and these two aspects connect very well with education. So therefore we can say that education is and culture is somewhere related to one another. So as the arena of culture covers everything that life and afterlife can hold it, therefore it's not easy. Like I have mentioned, it's very hard to understand the word culture in which it is used. Sometimes it can be ancient, sometimes it can be human behaviors, or sometimes it can be goals and customs that are passed on from one generation to another. And sometimes it can be new patterns that have evolved, that is the popular culture. So now we move on to the understanding of education. So, what do we mean by education? In short, we mean education means spreading the knowledge and gaining knowledge. It might be in any forms. Okay, so let's look into the definition. So, according to Constam and Gunning, education is a combination of growth and human development with social legacy. And according to Stella Van Peter Henderson, education is the formation of conscience. Education is a process of self formation and self determination, ethically conformed conscience. So, see, there is a connection between culture and education, because they talk of growth, they talk of human development, keeping in mind the society. And also, it talks about the formation of conscience. So, the formation of conscience not only starts through books that we read, or through the learnings that is taught in school or in colleges, but also it is something that we have learned it over the years. We can visit a school, a child goes to school only because from the very beginning, from the time he gains attention or he has his memory to understand, his understanding develops, he's been taught in a way that okay, tomorrow when you grow up, you become the age of 3 or 4, you need to go to school. And therefore the person learns. So that is also a kind of mental education that is being given to him, and later which is processed into a formal education. So education is basically also the process of facilitating learning or acquiring knowledge, skills, value, moral beliefs, and habits. Nowadays, education has become very like it is when we say of education, it comes into something which is formal. But we should always remember that education is not only formal; it is informal as well, and it can be in any means. It can be at home, and because society teaches us a lot of things, and society is one of the important factors in training the kids. And if when we talk about society, we cannot talk about society without the cultural patterns. So this shows that education and culture is connected. So when we talk about education, we have educare, which means to learn, educare to know, and educatum to lead out. So education means to bring the best out of individuals by means of knowledge, learning, and by sharing ideas, values, and norms. So this is education. And in general terms, education is a form of learning which the habits are transferred from one people to another, from one generation to another. So if we look into the Vedic readings, the Vedas are learned by a particular community and then they pass this through training and teaching. So, they pass this from one generation to another. So there is a similarity again with culture. The way we pass on our rituals, so we pass on our norms, we pass on our beliefs. Similarly, in education, also you pass the knowledge. Even in school, if we see, we might be confined inside a classroom or within a campus, and we say that okay, this is a school. Okay, this is where we get education. But it's the same thing. Our teachers are being taught by someone who is senior to them. Then we teach the kids, and the kids they teach it to the younger generation. So this is also there is also a constant, transformation of knowledge which is taking place. So in most of the cases in education, it is seen that it is more visible because it is done in a formalized manner, and we believe that there is always a guidance that is associated to education when it comes to learning. But at times it also can be autodidacted. So but in culture, we at times take it for granted that if we are doing this, obviously our child will do it. So it remains a bit subtle in the in establishing the knowledge or the ideologies to a child. But when it comes to education, it's fixed in teaching the child, okay, this is correct and this is wrong. So in real sense, education is any process through which one experience a formative effective on the way individuals think, feel, act, react, to understand. So this is how education works. So now next we are going to what is the relationship between education and culture. Okay, so as I have said, culture and education are interrelated because culture enables individual groups or community to create a sense of understanding, and on the other hand this understanding will help an individual to internalize the knowledge that he is learning. So basically when we have the understanding, when a culture develops our understanding, we think in a particular way. But whether the thing which we are learning through education is right or wrong, what to do, what not to do, we decide it through education. So culture is basically not a part of education but education in itself. Culture is education itself, and they have an impact on one another. So cultural patterns of a society that determines its educational system, and the educational system also affects the culture of the society by shaping and influencing the thinking and behavior of individual groups and community. So in short, both culture and education process are used to develop an individual. So there are various impact of culture on education. The first impact would be formulating education aims. So how can culture impact on education? So the point would be preservation of ideas, values, and beliefs. So when a curriculum, let us take an example of a curriculum. When a curriculum is made for a particular state or a country or a nation as a whole, so what happens is that the committee will look into the ideas, the belief system, and the values of that particular state or the country. So the culture creates a kind of a positive pressure on the education system so that they do not leave out these ideas, these beliefs and values which they follow. So then also culture helps in promotion of local, national and international culture through education. So when a country has a number of people, it's a very secular country in India, for example, and there are a lot of people who are into various organizations and all. So when we start doing something, we realize that okay, this is culture and this is what education has to do. So when the curriculums are designed, for example, they will look into what is the local culture. They look into what are the belief systems of the local people, the national people, and international culture. And then a lesson is prepared so that it doesn't hurt the sentiments of other, and it also gives the idea, gives an understanding of the people about the culture or the society in which we are living. So this is how impact of culture on education is. Okay, and also culture plays a very important role when it comes to ethnic groups and communities. So education, what it does, it tries to create a non-biased environment. So if we look into our books or curriculums, there are lessons on every particular thing, but without a bias stand. No biasness is shown through education. There'll always be, open ended, so that the persons get a chance to understand, and then they can react on. So the education helps in removing the cultural biases or any kind of biases in the society. So the next point would be reconstruction of knowledge and societal norms. So as there is changes in culture from time to time, the curriculum of the education system also changes. Right now, in the time of pandemic, we were never used to a environment in which we would not visit the school physically or the university physically. But now the time has come that suddenly, because there is a pandemic that is going on, we are changing our way of learning. We are changing the entire mode, and as a whole there are various organizations and institutes, and even education system, they have changed the curriculum. Earlier the event used to start, like, it would start in April. For some schools, the CBSE would start it in April, and the other school system, at least for my state, would start from the January, the sessions. But now there is a sudden change in the session, and the syllabuses are also being shrinked to a certain extent. So the reconstruction of knowledge and the change in the curriculum, because there is a change in the culture, because now the online culture has come up. So there is a change in the curriculum as well. And culture also enables one to create an update form of knowledge through updation in the education system. Yeah. So basically, few years till the time we were in colleges, there was no such topic on Harappan civilization, because the excavations were done, but no results were found. But initially, when we started coming up to college, it was like, Harappan civilization. The people who were studying history would learn about Harappan civilization and things at a long length. This was because suddenly a change in the environment takes place, or change in the knowledge system takes place. Immediately it is associated to culture. And because Harappan civilization culture is considered to be something which is very um, into Indian culture, and there is similarity in the Indian culture and the Harappan culture. So suddenly, the books upgrade themselves, and there is a lesson on Harappan culture, or there's a lesson on anything which is very updated. So culture, because it's something related to culture, it makes the topic more important, and therefore we can say that culture enables one to upgrade one's knowledge. Because till then we were not studying Harappan civilization, but the moment it started related to culture and it came out, the updation in the education started. So this is one aspect. Another would be tolerance and ethnocentrism. Yes, the impact of culture and on education is that in education it teaches us to accept flexibility, because in school, when we are a group of individuals, and we are from different religions, different castes, different sects. We are different, but then because you are from a culture which teaches you in the very first thing to adjust with society, whoever is same or different, you will learn flexibility. So therefore, today or tomorrow, when we visit a ritual which doesn't believe into the arena of our society or our cultural practices, we do not show ethnocentrism, we do not show. In return, we enjoy the universalism, we accept each other's cultures to a great extent. So this is what cultures teaches us. And as a whole, even in the education system, that is being followed. For example, we follow the calendar, we follow the state holiday calendar, and we also follow the national holiday calendar and few events from the international like calendar as well. So in this we can say that we are very tolerant towards, the culture impacts education in such a way that it is very tolerant towards one another. Because suppose we are celebrating Christmas and we have a holiday, the entire world celebrates Christmas holiday. but it might not be a very first priority in the list, but yet it's there and everyone follows it. There is a universalism that is created through education, which actually is a result of culture. Culture pushes us forward to tolerate and to follow universalism. So this is what about tolerance and ethnocentrism. Then there's some research activities. So yeah, when we look into culture or subcultures, the society, it determines the direction as well as dimensions for research. It shapes our ideology. So when we are into our culture and education is going on at the same time, we learn a lot of things from the education, and then we come up with our own cultural ideologies. And during research, it is very important because on one hand it says that we have to research things. The main idea is to find out things which are existing or which has a gap in it. And on the other hand, education tells us that you should choose this. And in the other hand, in our mind we have something liking towards a certain ideology and we tend to pick up the topic. So at times there is a conflict also, that education says that you should go for this topic, and your cultural background or your cultural alignment tells that you should go for this topic. In this case, culture sometimes impacts the research we are doing, because tomorrow if I go to a field where worship is done and which is known to me, I would take it very lightly and I would accept it, and I can become biased on that because I belong to that culture, and I can write a lot of good things, not writing the bad things about it. But because we are educated, and education teaches us discipline, it teaches us rules, it teaches us to see things in the way it has to be seen without any biasness. Therefore we can actually um, differentiate between what we have to write and what we not have to write, or what is the actual ethics of research that we have to follow, or we should not be biased in the sense. So in research activities activities also, culture plays a major role in shaping our research ideas and what ethics to follow. So this has on one impact on culture and education. So other is culture affects the behavior. Yeah, that's definitely true, because every time we get to hear this from people that our behavior shows that how we are born and brought up and how we react to a situation. Definitely the culture affects our behavior, because if we look into an example, in a school a teacher is teaching and the kid is there is a kid who is not listening at all. The teacher, because she is being taught or she is being cultured in that manner, she can handle a kid, or she can handle 100 number of kids in a class, because she follows the norms that is set by the education system, that this teacher, as a teacher you have this norms, and this is the culture of the school that you're following. This is how you treat your kids, and this is how you control them in school. So they get engaged in it very fast. So culture affects the behavior. So if we have been living in an environment or in a society which is very homogeneous, our attitudes of thinking will also become homogeneous. But because we are in a society which is very heterogeneous, our ideas and thought processes are also very different, and we are open to one another. So culture also affects the behavior of an individual and also the society. So how impact of culture on education is, and how education also impacts culture. So what education does is it enables in promoting equality. So when we talk about equality, the two booming topics that we are talking about is gender equality and women empowerment. So what is happening earlier in times, we can see that when there was education was less, or education system was not that formalized, it was seen that women were always kept at their homes, or they were treated as someone who is more comfortable in the private arena rather than the public arena, or there was some kind of gender biasness, because in the culture itself, in many culture, it was very patriarchal in nature. Culture was patriarchal in nature in the very beginning, and the society was molded in such a way that it seemed that the entire surrounding is patriarchal. Therefore, it used to keep gender separate, women and men or any other gender separate, and men used to be considered as the highest form in gender, in terms of gender. And therefore, women were also not allowed to go out, and they used to be in the household doing household chores, but not involving in the field of professionalism. But now when education started, like the very beginning we have said that culture is going on, and culture changes and education changes, and education changes culture. So when we started understanding with the help of our cultural backings, we have started understanding certain things, and then we have gained education. What happens is like gradually we come to know, because of our education, we come to know that there are certain aspects in culture which needs to change with the change in time. And one resultant of how education has also impacted the cultures that have been following across is gender equality. Because unlike earlier times, now gender equality is becoming, the gap is bridging itself, and male female in other genders are becoming closer to one another. The proximity is reducing and there is closeness. And another example for promoting equality and how education has helped in changing the forms of gender ideas would be women empowerment. So another thing that education impacts the cultural system in a positive way would be social systems, in which we can look into the untouchability, the impurity, or change in the work culture arena. So when we are getting ourselves educated earlier in terms, we can see that in our societies we have things like untouchabilities, the harijans, or the untouchable classes, and people would be very much ingrained and would be more into this categorical divisions that was set to us, or that was set to our previous generations. But because education is expanding, the globalization is coming, things like untouchability, impurity, the entire idea of pure and profane has been removed. And even now education, if we look into the arenas of education in which females can go, have expanded a lot. Because at times there were arenas selected, home science means a girl have to do that course. Okay, if it's pilot, oh wow, then it will be dealt with only by men. But now, because education is increasing and people are changing their mindset, and the cultural patterns are also gradually changing, therefore the cultural norms are also changing. So this three would be a good example to talk about when we talk about how education has changed the social systems. And then unfolding the truth, this is very important, because through education we are unfolding the truth. Because in our cultures, or in our rituals, or in our practices, or in our ideologies, because sometimes we misinterpret our ideologies, or sometimes because the context or the content of the earlier stages were different from what we are living today and what we are facing today, there was always some things which we carried on from our past, which is now no longer a reality. It might have been a reality in the past, but now it is not a reality. So education helps us in unfolding the truth, because education helps us to think rationally. It helps us to find the slight difference between what is real and what is myth. Because with the advancement of education, there is a development in science and technology, which search for evidences, which search for rational thinking, the logical reasoning. And it enables individuals to remove the stereotypes and superstitions they have, and thus unfolding the truth. So this is one example that I would say, that how education has impacted on culture. Because there are various incidences on which, for example, witch hunting and practices like that were considered, like we never had seen a witch, or how witchcraft is performed, or how which would do certain kind of things. Just believe that witches are people who do this kinds of things, which is not relevant, so we should kill them. But actually the reality might be something very different. But science and technology has looked into these matters and have come up with various proofs, pro or non-pro, that's a different thing. But now when we are looking at education, we look into education not blindly, but we use our logical and reasoning, and we also use applied sciences in certain cases to look into and to unfold the truth. So this is one important point. The next is, yeah, we agree that there are certain hindrances in our education system, as well as in understanding the cultures that we have. And there's also a lack of coding and decoding between the communication between an individual and me. Today I'm sitting over here talking about education and culture. I might be interpreting certain things in a different way, and on the other side my viewers might reinterpret the same thing in a different way. So lack of understandings or communication sometimes acts as a hindrance in various aspects. For example, in some books also we can see that there are lessons which are not gender biased, but somewhere it tries to promote a males in a higher status. So these are some kind of hindrances, and sometimes there are also social life limitations. So, for example, there are certain rituals which might not be accepted by society at this moment because they are becoming very pro environment, they are becoming very pro animals, they are becoming very pro um, any living organisms on this globe. But because there is some social or cultural norms related to one individual community, you cannot open it up and you cannot say a direct no to those, because of the social life limitations also sometimes, and also because of some preconceived notions also, and stringent attitudes of individuals or certain systems or certain laws or certain norms. There are hindrances because of which at times culture and education, as I've already said in the earlier, had to some way deviate sometimes. But we cannot say that they are not connected yet. Keeping these hindrances in mind, if we try to club up, we can still see that education and culture is connected to one another. To conclude, I would like to say that as culture is a dynamic process, your education is also a dynamic process. They travel together from past to the present and will continue to the future. But when it comes to culture and education, because these two are something which will do good for the welfare of the people, so it's necessary that we understand them, we promote them, and we use them wisely for greater good. So this is by which I would like to conclude saying that education and culture plays a major role in shaping us as an individual, the society, and the country as a whole. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that. Uh, Ma'am, do you think that culture should be included in our school curriculum as a separate subject?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Culture should be included in our school curriculum as a subject, because recently I was also working with an organization outside in Africa, and then there were a lot of people who only knew their language, or they knew only the norms that are there. And once we had an interaction program, they also learned a lot new. And then there were certain things that we learned that it even exists. We didn't think that it would exist. So I think culture should be introduced in our education system, because it will enable individual to increase their arena of learning, the way they think, and also the topic that I said, they will learn how to avoid ethnocentrism. So I think culture should be included. And because culture is also seen as performance, it's also seen as art. So when you teach kids in school, when it is in the education system and culture is involved, the kids are very easy to mold. Whatever you teach them, they take it. So from the very beginning, if culture is introduced to them, or in form of either some kind of activities, or in form of music, or in form of visit to a heritage site or things like that, if cultural angle is included, indirectly we are also helping them a lot, not only for the performances but also to learn things better. So I think culture should be included in the curriculum of the school.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And before we leave, I request you to watch our Detox, our Disruptive Literacy Movement by Global Dream, which is another initiative by Dr. Sunita Gandhi since 2014. This is to ensure total literacy in India and as a people's movement. So each one of us should be taking this responsibility to make sure that our brothers and sisters, all of them, become literate. We have regular talks on this every day. And for more information, please find out from 740-840-1000. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you, and see you tomorrow. Thank you, ma'am.